My daughter will always take my side. My husband would often say this to me. I had no way to verify if this was true because my daughter wouldn't speak to me. I married a man who was divorced with a daughter about 7 years ago. I tried my best to create a warm home environment, always talking to both my husband and his daughter, maintaining a consistent attitude. However, my husband was rarely home, and there were many days when he wouldn't return at all. His daughter wouldn't respond when I talked to her, and we could barely exchange words. Moreover, the relationship between my husband and his daughter had deteriorated, with her showing defiant behavior towards her father. The atmosphere at home was always cold and distant. When I told my husband he needed to have a proper conversation with his daughter, he would always say, "She and I are blood relatives. No matter how angry she gets, she's my daughter, so there's no way she could hate me." No matter how many times I told him that wasn't true, he wouldn't listen. Instead, he would mock me, saying, "Well, you're just an outsider." After trying for 7 years, I finally returned to my parents' home alone. I ignored all contact from my husband. I was just giving him back exactly what he had done to me for 7 years. Then my husband barged into my parents' house. How irresponsible can you be? Abandoning your family like this, you really are the worst mother. You failed as a mother. He stood there hurling vulgar insults at me. But while he was ranting, he froze at the voice from behind me. Look who's talking about being the worst. I'm Minerva, a 32-year-old office worker at a trading company. I had been living with my husband and his daughter Ariana, but now I'm back at my parents' home. I had endured as long as I could, but I finally reached my limit. I married my husband, whom I met through work, 7 years ago. Shortly after we started dating, he told me he was divorced and had a daughter in 3rd grade. Then he said he wanted to marry me. I was in my mid-20s at the time, and not many people around me were married, let alone dating someone with such complicated circumstances. So I couldn't easily confide in my friends, and had to wrestle with my concerns alone. He persistently proposed to me, saying he wanted to be with me forever. While the proposals themselves made me happy, I couldn't help but worry about what lay ahead. I couldn't imagine suddenly becoming a mother to an elementary school student, and I was concerned about his divorce history. So I expressed all these anxieties and questions to him. We talked about it many times. Sometimes our discussions would get heated. But I felt we couldn't get married if he was going to brush off my concerns and questions. After taking time to discuss everything, I decided to marry him. However, my anxieties and doubts never completely disappeared, and I wasn't overjoyed about getting married. The main reason I decided to marry him was because I grew up in a single-father household. My mother passed away from illness shortly after I started elementary school. The sadness of losing a mother from our home and the loneliness of not wanting to burden my already busy father remained vivid in my heart. Surely, his daughter must have similar feelings. Although his ex-wife hadn't passed away, they had divorced due to personality differences. We shared the experience of living in a single-father household. I thought we would have a lot in common. After I decided to marry him, he introduced me to his daughter. A 3rd grader is still quite young. When I saw how uncertain she looked, I felt I needed to be there for her. I can't deny that I was projecting my younger self onto her. But I knew the loneliness must be there. I decided I would stand by her and be her absolute ally. It might be difficult for her to accept a stranger suddenly appearing as her mother. But I hoped she could rely on me as an adult woman taking on the role of a mother. I myself had longed for a family consisting of a father, mother, and child, and I wanted to live a lively, enjoyable life as a family. Through marriage, that ideal setup would be created. All that remained was to work hard at becoming comfortable with each other over time. So I got married. We bought a used condominium when we married, and my new life with my husband and his daughter began. As expected, building a relationship with his daughter wasn't easy, but I was prepared for that. I approached each day determined to face her sincerely and remain her ally no matter what. Actually, the real problem turned out to be my husband rather than his daughter. My husband suddenly became obsessed with photography, repeatedly buying expensive cameras and lenses, and going out to take pictures. It became normal for him to go out alone on his days off and not return until night, or to leave work early on weekdays and wander around with his camera until late at night. I had spoken up more than once about how he was neglecting our family. Before marriage, we had talked about how he needed to help foster a good relationship between me and his daughter. However, my husband insisted that he was doing this to take beautiful photos at her graduation and entrance ceremonies, and never changed his behavior. His photography obsession kept growing until he finally announced he was quitting his company job to become a freelance photographer. Of course, I opposed this. His daughter had just entered middle school, and we would need more and more money for her education. We had a mortgage to pay. We couldn't expect his income as a photographer to exceed his company's salary. After all, he was just an amateur photography enthusiast. In the end, he dismissed my concerns, saying, "As long as I bring home the same amount of money, there's no problem," and quit his job. Furthermore, using photography as an excuse, he spent even more time away from home. Seeing this, his daughter began to avoid her father as well. After getting married, I realized that my husband was careless in his attitude toward his daughter. When he was in a good mood, he would sometimes ask her, "How's school going?" But when he was in a bad mood, he would ignore her even when she tried to talk to him. I wonder how suffocating it must have been for her if it had always been like this. When she was younger, she probably just went along with it, but now she was in the midst of adolescence and started ignoring such a father. Even when he was in a good mood and tried to talk to her, she would ignore him and shut herself in her room. When he got angry and yelled at her for this, she would mutter, "Stop pretending to be a father," and leave the house. Honestly, I think he deserves to be told that. Not only in how he treats her, but he's never even around. It's natural that she wouldn't want to deal with a father who only approaches her based on his mood. And even after having such conflicts with his daughter, he would just go out again. He never had proper conversations with her, and when enough time had passed, the same cycle would repeat. As his daughter's contempt for him grew more obvious, I suggested to him that he should have a proper talk with her. I tried to arrange opportunities for father and daughter to talk, with me mediating, but my husband wouldn't even listen properly. She and I are blood relatives. No matter how angry she gets, she's my daughter, so there's no way she could hate me. He would say this whenever the issue came up. A parent-child relationship can't be reduced to simple terms like or dislike. While blood ties might make it difficult to completely separate from each other, I believe that without trust, such a relationship becomes nothing more than a curse. Ignoring your daughter when she's trying to talk, yelling at her depending on your mood, intimidating her with loud noises, some might consider this abuse. I'm not hitting her or anything. Physical violence isn't the only form of abuse. One day, she'll really leave you, you know? I told you, we're blood relatives, so it's fine. It seemed nothing I said would change my husband's mind. You're just an outsider though. That's why my daughter will always take my side. And he would always end by throwing these words at me. I thought this couldn't be true, but I couldn't say so with confidence. Because his daughter avoided me too. I knew part of it was because she was at an age where teenagers typically don't want to talk to their parents, being in the middle of her rebellious phase. But it's true that ultimately, his daughter and I were strangers. While I didn't believe that blood ties alone could excuse everything as my husband claimed, I couldn't be as assertive without any blood connection. In any case, I believed his daughter was completely blameless. My husband's behavior was terrible, and it was natural for her to want to tell him to stop pretending to be a father. Her attitude toward me wasn't strange either, considering her age and my position as her stepmother. All I could do was continue to face his daughter properly. Even if I was ignored, even if I was avoided, I would continue to be her ally. I would protect our home where family could return to, and I wouldn't give up on having dialogue with both my husband and his daughter. I continued thinking this way for 7 years. My husband still spent more time away from home than in it, making excuses about photo shoots while doing whatever he pleased. His daughter entered high school and barely spoke at home, staying in her room most of the time. Though we were supposed to be a family of 3, I was the only one who spoke in this house. I had tried my best all this time, but I was only human. Even my persistent desire to build a warm family home had finally run out. There's no such thing as an unbreakable steel heart that can withstand endless blows, and my broken heart seemed beyond repair. I returned to my parents' house alone and didn't respond to any of my husband's attempts to contact me. I was simply returning exactly what he had done to me over 7 years. When I left home and returned to my parents' house, my husband came to visit the following weekend. He had probably grown impatient with me ignoring all his phone messages. I'm sure it was just because he found it inconvenient not having someone to do the housework. "What do you want?" I at least let him into the entryway. However, I had no obligation to let him further into the house. How irresponsible can you be? Abandoning your family, you really are unfit to be a mother, my husband shouted, pointing at me. He was always like this, verbally abusing me in a loud voice. At first, I was scared, and I didn't want his daughter to see her father yelling, so I thought I had to avoid making him angry. That's why I never defied him and accepted his opinions. But I'm done with such patience. Who's really abandoning the family and wandering around? What did you say? I have work, you know. I work too. Plus I take care of everything at home. Don't you think the burden is too uneven? Housework is a wife's job. There's no such rule anywhere. Shut up. You've even abandoned taking care of my daughter. You're the worst mother. I wonder which mouth is saying this. As a father, how much has he neglected his daughter? He seems to have no self-awareness, but this man is the one who's failed as a father. You're useless both as a mother and as a wife. Let's get divorced, my husband said, thrusting a blank divorce form in front of me. So he brought it with him. Yes, let's get divorced. As for the details, we can involve lawyers, but we can submit this form right away if you want. What? This is divorce we're talking about. Are you okay with having that mark on your record? It's far better than staying married to you. My husband apparently thought I would resist divorce. He was at a loss for words at my response. I wonder what he thought I came back to my parents' house for. I was actually grateful he brought the divorce papers. Hey! Get in here. Suddenly my husband opened the front door and leaned outside. Then he dragged in Ariana, his daughter. He grabbed her arm and forcibly pulled her into the entryway, making her stand beside him. Tell her you don't want us to divorce. It'll be inconvenient not having someone to take care of you, my husband shouted at his daughter, but her face contorted in pain. Partly from being yelled at from such a close distance, but surely her arm hurt where he was gripping it. She looks like she's in pain. Let go of her arm. I couldn't stand it anymore. My husband probably thought he could make me come back by using his daughter as a shield. That's the only reason he brought her here. Probably by force too. Not only gripping her arm hard enough to make her face contort in pain, but using his daughter as a convenient means to an end was unforgivable. Shut up. This is all your fault, my husband said frantically, releasing his grip on his daughter's arm. There's no way this is my fault. You're the only one at fault. That's why I'm saying we should divorce. Hey, what's with you? After 7 years, why now? Because you haven't changed even after 7 years. Abandoning your family, you really are the worst mother. Look who's talking about being the worst. A low voice came from behind me, and my husband's shoulders jumped. Opening the living room door and coming out was my father. He had the day off work today, so he was home. This is my parents' house, so there's nothing strange about my father being here. I was staying quiet thinking it was a matter between husband and wife, but I see you've involved your daughter too. Then let me join this discussion. Minerva, invite them in. Though my father spoke calmly, it was obvious he was suppressing his anger. The husband in front of me was trembling. My father is a former self-defense force member who now works for a security company after retirement. He's naturally tall and still keeps himself in good shape, so he has an imposing appearance. My husband seems to have been intimidated by my father since the beginning, always reluctant to visit my parents' house. However, the master of this house has asked them to come in. As I invited them in, my husband shuffled forward with a bitter expression. The four of us sat down at the dining table again. Time passed with no one speaking, and the atmosphere felt ice cold. I was initially opposed to Minerva's marriage. My father broke the silence. When I heard about a man more than 10 years older with a fairly grown child, I was thinking about how to discourage her, my father said with a sigh. This is true. When I told him I was thinking about marriage, he clearly said, to be honest, I cannot approve. However, since my wife passed away, I've made Minerva feel lonely and made her endure a lot. I couldn't deny her wish to build a lively family. My father worked hard to raise me. When I was young, my grandparents would sometimes visit, and my father was always considerate of me. I still have memories with my mother, and I never felt lonely. However, I knew my father felt guilty about me. Indeed, when I saw other families or when friends casually mentioned my mom in conversation, I would sometimes feel like a wind was blowing through my chest. The sense of loss from missing a piece that should have been there never completely disappears. That's why I wanted to build a fun, warm family. Not just for my own hope, but I wanted to create such a home for Ariana too. I noticed that my father had understood these feelings of mine. That's why I couldn't tell him when my relationship with my husband deteriorated. I thought it would worry him if I consulted him about it, since he hadn't welcomed this marriage in the first place. Also, I didn't want to give up easily. I wanted to have confidence in my decision. Well, in the end, I painfully realized it was impossible and ended up seeking refuge at my parents' house. That's why I asked you to promise to protect Minerva and make her happy, and you said you would. So what is this all about? My father said to my husband sitting across from him. Speaking in a low, pressured voice, my father's anger was palpable. My husband hunched his shoulders and remained frozen, unable to say anything. You brought divorce papers, didn't you? Fill them out now. My daughter clearly has no intention of reconciling. But, father-in-law. You have no right to call me that, my father thundered, making the air vibrate. My husband, face pale, hurriedly pulled out the divorce papers he was holding and placed them on the table. He started filling out the forms. After all the fields were filled and the divorce papers were ready to be submitted, I finally felt the tension leave my shoulders. Why don't we discuss future arrangements now? My father then said. Indeed, if we could divorce by mutual agreement, that would be best. I'm taking custody. I'm the blood-related father, so that's obvious. You can live alone. But I'll be taking child support. And you need to pay compensation. With a twisted smile, he said such things. While I was thinking how this man hadn't changed at all, my daughter, who had been sitting across from me, stood up, brought her chair over to my side, and sat down next to me. I'm going with Mom, she said clearly to my dumbfounded husband. Being called Mom made emotion gradually well up in my chest. Meanwhile, my husband was in a panic. What? She's a stranger. And she's the type who just walks out on family. She's far more reliable and kind than you are. You used to hate her too. I hate you. I don't hate Mom. My husband was speechless after hearing his daughter's true feelings. What he didn't know was that before I left home, I had managed to have a proper conversation with his daughter. That conversation was what led me to decide to leave that house. It happened a little while ago, on a day when heavy rain fell around his daughter's school dismissal time. I had taken the day off and was at home. Outside, the rain was coming down hard, with raindrops violently hitting the windows. Thinking how sorry I felt for my daughter who would have to walk and take the train home in this weather, I sent her a message on the off chance. The rain is terrible. Should I come pick you up from school by car? Although there was a higher chance she would ignore me as usual, I always tried to maintain the same approach toward my daughter regardless of the situation. While I wouldn't push too hard, I never stopped trying to communicate. I wanted to make sure she wouldn't feel uncomfortable talking to me when she wanted to. Yes, please. Her reply came within 5 seconds of my message, which surprised me. It had been normal for her not to reply to my messages at all, and I had never received such a quick response before. I'll head out now and message you when I arrive at school, I replied and drove to park near the main gate of her high school. I sent her a message saying I had arrived and waited for a while. Then through the heavy rain, my daughter appeared with an umbrella. She opened the passenger door and got in. Although she had only walked a short distance, her uniform was wet. I was glad I had come to pick her up after all. Welcome back. I'm home. When I greeted her, she gave a reserved but clear response. This surprised me again. For years, my daughter hadn't directed any words toward me except for necessary communications. While she would sometimes send written responses to questions via message, I couldn't remember the last time we had this kind of vocal conversation. Is there anywhere you'd like to stop by? No. Then let's head home. I pressed the accelerator and started driving toward home. Inside, I was actually overjoyed. I was so happy that my daughter was properly conversing with me. But if I made a big deal about it, she might not like it. If she finally started responding to me but then stopped talking again, that would be sad. So I decided to keep quiet while driving as usual, just as I always had. I suppressed my excitement even though it felt like it might burst out. I should try to maintain my usual demeanor. However, surprisingly, my daughter started speaking to me. Stay calm. I need to respond in my usual voice. Yes, what is it? Are you not going to divorce, Dad? What? So much for my usual voice. Her sudden bombshell question made my voice crack. Well, at this point, I don't have any such plans. Dad's barely home anyway. Would anything really change if you divorced? I wondered what she meant by this. Did she want us to divorce? While she might not be particularly fond of her father, perhaps she found it suffocating to live alone with a stepmother after he was gone. He's probably having another affair anyway, she said in a cold voice. More than whether my husband was having an affair, the word another caught my attention. You know something about this? It's his pattern when he's seeing another woman, and besides, children observe their parents well. Parents often underestimate their children, thinking they're just kids. My daughter must have been worried about her father's behavior, but she seemed hesitant to continue. When Mom divorced him, he was having an affair but kept it hidden. By a mom, she meant my husband's ex-wife. The story I had heard from my husband was that they both became too busy, grew apart, and their relationship became irreparable. But it turns out he had been having an affair. He only took custody of me to get child support. I heard him talking about it when he brought a woman home. When my husband divorced his previous wife, Ariana was still in kindergarten, I'd heard. To think she had learned about such an ugly adult side at such a young age. And from her own father, no less. Do you meet with your mother regularly? I met her a few times, but then we stopped seeing each other. Dad said I couldn't see her anymore because she was getting remarried, but now I'm not sure if that was even true. My husband must have told her this. While remarriage shouldn't prevent them from meeting, perhaps her mother really did say that, or maybe my husband lied to stop the mother and daughter from meeting. Surely my daughter sensed this possibility too. I could imagine my husband doing something like that. Perhaps because it was troublesome, or to prevent his daughter from saying she wanted to live with her mother. How much must this child have been hurt since she was young? Being pushed around by adult circumstances, and the only father she could rely on being like that. Thinking about my daughter's feelings made my chest ache. You must have wanted to see your mother? When I said I wanted to see Mom, he would get really angry, so I learned not to say it. What a worthless father. What does he think his child's feelings are? My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with anger toward my husband. I'm sorry for ignoring you all this time, my daughter suddenly apologized, almost making me turn to look at her in surprise. I managed to resist because I was driving, but it was quite a shock. I was afraid if I got close to you, he would definitely get in a bad mood. Then his attacks would be directed at you. You were thinking about that? I felt like crying. When I married her father, my daughter was just entering 4th grade. To think that such a young child had been acting with my welfare in mind. I had intended to protect her, but it turned out I was the one being protected. Because that's how it was at first, I didn't know how to start talking to you later. When you offered to pick me up by car, I thought I might be able to talk in the car. My daughter's words, spoken with a slight laugh, made me truly happy. I'm glad I didn't give up. Though it took time, I was able to connect with my daughter. You should get divorced. It's better without someone like him, right? It must have taken courage for my daughter to speak to me. Yet she cared about me enough to encourage divorce. Indeed, I thought divorce might be okay. At this point, I couldn't and wouldn't expect anything from my husband anymore. But what would happen to Ariana? If I divorce him, will you come with me? When I said this, I sensed my daughter catch her breath. While there's no blood connection between me and my daughter, with a father like that, staying with him would only be harmful. It could just be while you're a student. You could live on your own once you start working. Is that possible? Even though I'm just a stepdaughter? It's possible. You're at an age where your wishes take priority. Whether we're related by blood doesn't matter if we're parent and child. Then, I want to go with you, my daughter said in a small voice. Now it's my turn to protect her. All right. Then we need to plan our strategy. Yes. My daughter and I formed an alliance and discussed a lot about divorce and our life afterward. While I hadn't expected her to be brought here today, the outcome remains the same. As we had discussed, my daughter came to my side. So, will you go home alone? When I said this, my husband glared at us while trembling. What's with you two? Ganging up and leaving me out, you're both so nasty. My husband started saying nonsensical things again. This man seriously believes that he's being unfairly treated even though he's done nothing wrong. Perhaps he becomes aggressive because he thinks everyone else is bad and making him suffer. I might be seeing the most self-centered person I've ever met. This is ridiculous. Going with a stranger is absurd. Just shut up and listen to your parent. Get over here now. We're going home. While my husband continued ranting, he fell silent at my father's single word, quiet. It was pathetic how he could act tough toward me and his daughter but couldn't stand up to my father at all. He probably feels superior by bullying those he perceives as weaker than him. He's really just a small-minded man. We have the divorce papers filled out, so let's have you leave for today. Alone, of course. But, if this child wants to stay with my daughter, then this child becomes my granddaughter. We'll take care of her, so don't worry. But I'm her parent. I've heard the story. Someone who doesn't come home has no right to call himself a parent. Well, because of work and... My father already knew everything. I had honestly told him about my husband's behavior until now, my intention to divorce, and my plan to take custody of his daughter. While we would discuss the details of life after divorce with my daughter, I had asked if we could stay in this house for now. My father had said, "Stay as long as you like. The discussion is over." "Please leave," my father said, standing up and looking down at my husband. I'll take my daughter home. Didn't you hear? She said she won't go with you. We're blood-related parent and child. Children are not cards to be played for child support. My husband's shoulders jumped at my father's words. The reason he was so desperate not to let go of his daughter was indeed to receive child support. How despicable. This is my final warning. Leave immediately, my father added in a low voice. This is my house. If you insist on staying, I'll call the police. Leave now if you don't want to be arrested for trespassing. Grinding his teeth and glaring at me, my husband slowly stood up. My father stuck close behind him, using his presence to pressure my husband out. After my husband was driven out of the house, my father returned to the living room. Well, now that the nuisance is gone, shall we go out for a nice dinner? It's a welcome party, my father said with a smile, making me and Ariana look at each other and laugh. With school starting for my daughter next week, we'd like to move her belongings from the house this weekend if possible. Since both my daughter and I have spare keys, and my husband is never home anyway, we can go get them later. We have plenty to do to prepare for our new life ahead, things we need to take care of, matters to research, actions we need to take. Still, the future looks bright. My daughter's smile is proof of that. I hoped we could live peacefully and happily from now on. However, for some reason, my husband came to my parents' house again the next weekend. I was tricked. Well, I don't know anything about that. Today, my father is at work. My daughter is here, but I've told her to stay in her room upstairs. So she shouldn't have to face my husband, whom I've let into the living room. When the intercom rang earlier and I checked the camera, it was my husband. I answered with determination to send him away, wondering what he wanted this time. But he kept pleading, "Just hear me out," in a pathetic voice, so I eventually let him in. It would be troublesome if he made a scene outside, and my father had told me to call the police if he wouldn't leave when asked to go. As soon as my husband sat on the living room sofa, he started talking. His camera had been stolen, he said. After listening to his rambling story while pressing him for details, it turned out that he had left an expensive camera at his mistress's house, but both the camera and the mistress had disappeared. He had decided to propose marriage to his mistress since he was going to divorce me anyway, and she had said she was happy. However, she became unreachable immediately afterward, and when he went to her house yesterday, she had already moved out. While he was shocked that she had disappeared, he was most upset about losing his most valuable camera. She said she loved this camera, so I bought it, and I left it there because she said she always wanted to look at it. Do you know how much that camera cost? That has nothing to do with me. Is that what you came to talk about? No, well, I was thinking maybe we could try again. What? This man must have really lost his mind. To suggest getting back together after admitting to having an affair. I'm sick of women who steal cameras and disappear, and I'll properly come home now. It's because you can't afford the rent alone, right? That seemed to hit the mark, as my husband fell silent. It must be difficult to live on just his freelance photographer income. I think he should either get a part-time job or move to a place with cheaper rent. Trying to make me pay is just too shameless. There's absolutely no chance of reconciliation. Just wait for contact from the lawyer. Why? I was the one who was tricked. What are you saying after having an affair? I told him firmly. Well, that woman turned out to be bad. You came to me because your mistress who you were counting on for money disappeared, right? I really don't understand you. Just go home. Don't you feel sorry for me getting my camera stolen? Don't you have any heart? This person always thinks he's the only victim. He can't see anything around him. Thank you for admitting to the affair. I'll be claiming compensation. How dirty. I won't pay anything like that. I'll have my lawyer talk to your side about it. Actually, this entire conversation was already being recorded. I had secretly placed a recorder. The truth about the affair should be clearly documented. Just go home now. I'll call the police. Go ahead and try. Are you okay with causing such a scene? Okay, I will. I took out my phone, operated it, and held it to my ear. Hello, there's someone who won't leave our house, like a trespasser. Hey. Don't mess around. My husband quickly fled. I heard him run out and slam the front door. I took the phone away from my ear. I hadn't actually called the police. It was just an act, but I thought it would work on such a cowardly man, and it worked even better than expected. Anyway, now I had his confession about his infidelity as evidence. It's time to properly engage a lawyer. As for my husband's partner, we didn't know who she was or where she was from. Since she had moved away and even my husband didn't know where she was, I was thinking of giving up on claiming compensation from her. However, my daughter, who had secretly listened to the conversation when my husband came, managed to find that supposedly stolen camera on a flea market website. Since my husband had mentioned the camera's name, she was able to search for it after confirming it from the recorder's audio. Moreover, she contacted the seller pretending to be interested in buying, and managed to get their name and address through their exchanges. Furthermore, my daughter found the mistress's social media accounts by tracing back from the camera. By searching through past posts, she discovered evidence that the mistress had been dating my husband knowing he was married. Armed with all this information, we formally engaged a lawyer and were able to claim compensation from both of them. Later, I heard from the lawyer that the mistress had stormed into my husband's place demanding that he pay her compensation too. But of course, my husband wouldn't agree to that, and apparently tried to run away with her brand name bag, saying, "You can sell this instead." Perhaps he wanted revenge for having his camera stolen, but I felt utterly disappointed listening to the lawyer tell the story with a wry smile. Thanks to the lawyer's efforts, we were able to get a reasonable amount of compensation from both my husband and his mistress. After the division of property, this whole incident finally came to an end. My daughter, my father, and I started a new life in a new place. Originally, my daughter and I had planned to move out on our own. However, when my daughter invited my father saying, "Grandpa should come too," we decided to move all three of us together after waiting for my father's retirement. After all, my ex-husband knew about that house, and we couldn't rule out potential dangers entirely. Since my father said he would come with us, we decided to put that house up for sale. With my father's retirement money, my income, and temporary income like the compensation payment, we were able to start our new life smoothly. My daughter and I talk a lot, making up for the time we couldn't speak to each other, and we go out together and enjoy a close relationship. While it might be a somewhat unconventional arrangement, I've managed to create the warm family home I've wanted since childhood. Every day is enjoyable, and we laugh a lot. I can truly feel that this is what a happy family is like.